This episode is brought to you by Squarespace. Go to squarespace.com/companyman, that's COMPANYMAN, to get 10% off your first purchase, as well as a 14-day free trial. I'm currently in the process of building my website using Squarespace, so I'd like to get some feedback about what I should have on it. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that at the end of this video, but for now, let's talk about some candy hearts. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. This video is being released on Valentine's Day. And what a better topic to talk about on Valentine's Day than these little candy hearts. It's a fun candy. They have little messages on them. You can share them with people. Not one of the best tasting candies in my opinion, but it's not often you see a food with words on it like this. And the only time we get to see them is right around this time every year. Then when the holiday's over, they're nowhere to be found. If you're watching this any month outside of January or February, I challenge you to go find some. It can't be done. All of these things make it one of the most unique candies out there, so I thought I'd take a look into the company that makes them. And I'm glad I did. The company that makes them is actually NECCO, New England Confectionery Company, out of Boston. You may not be too familiar with the name. It's not one of the larger candy companies, but they do make a lot more than just the candy hearts. In fact, if you are familiar with them, it's probably because of the NECCO wafer. That's likely their most popular candy, and it was their first. It's a circular, sugary, chalky candy, very similar to the hearts. It's the same batter, but a different cooking process. Again, not one of my favorite tasting candies, but the story of how they were invented is something you're going to want to hear. It concerns a pharmacist named Oliver Chase over 171 years ago, so you don't have to go get your calculator. That was the year 1847. The big thing in the pharmaceutical world at the time were lozenges, and a lozenge is essentially what you would call a cough drop, something like what you would get from Halls. The pharmacists would take your medicine, crush it into a dough, load it with sugar to make it taste good, roll it out, and cut shapes from it, similar to if you were making cookies. But that was a lot of work. It took a long time. They even needed these things. Now, old Oliver Chase invented a machine that would do all this for him. All he had to do was turn the crank. I don't believe any pictures of this machine exists. It was 1847 after all, but I hear it looks similar to a pasta maker. So that's what I'm showing here. Mr. Chase soon made the decision to cut out all the medicine from the lozenges and sell them that way. And once he did that, he was just selling candy. This machine, well, not the pasta maker, but the actual one, is considered to be America's first candy-making machine. So, strangely enough, you could say America's first candy-making machine was created by accident. Oliver Chase started selling these candies on his own for a while, and he eventually teamed up with his brother to form a company called Chase & Company. Then in 1901, that company merged with another one called Fobes, Hayward & Company, and a third one called Wright Moody to form an entirely new company called NECCO. Now, my bet is that most of the people watching this either haven't heard of NECCO or know them only for these wafers, possibly the candy hearts, though I suspect if yesterday I had asked you who made them, you wouldn't have came up with the name NECCO. But as I'm learning is the case with a lot of candy companies, they do make other things that you may be familiar with. Way back in the 1880s, they came out with Canada Mints, started in Canada but have been in the US now for over a century. And you know those colorful candy buttons attached to that strip of paper? Well, they own that whole market. In 1980, they bought a company that makes them, and 9 years later, they bought the only other company that made them, the Clark Bar. They've been making that since the late 90s. In the late 60s, they came out with Mighty Malt's Malted Milk Balls, one of the harder candies to say. I haven't heard of these, but I suppose they're popular during Christmas and Easter. They also make Slapsticks, the Sky Bar, as of 2004, Squirrel Nut Zippers. There's actually a popular band that took that for their name, though when they chose that name in the 90s, the candy was still made by the Squirrel brand company, so we can't give NECCO any credit for that. I know I'm all over the place with the years, but in 1990, they acquired the Stark Candy Company, who not only made the popular candy called Mary Jane, but also a competing line of candy hearts called Sweethearts Conversation Hearts. That's a lot of hearts. So today, if you see them in the store, there's a really good chance that they came from the people at NECCO. The invention of the candy heart stems right from the invention of the NECCO wafer. They made a die that would print words on the wafer and invented a way for their fancy lozenge machine to print the words as well. At the time, the wafers were larger and the sayings were longer. They weren't even really associated with Valentine's Day, they were just a fun thing to have at a party or a wedding. In 1902, they started producing them in the heart shape that we know today, as well as other shapes like baseballs and watches. It sounds like they were having a lot of fun with their new candy machines back then. Today, of course, they are pretty exclusive to Valentine's Day. According to the NECCO website, they prepare all year for this current 6-week period. They say they produce them all year, get about 2 billion hearts ready to sell, then sell them all in this 6 weeks, and get right back to producing them for next year. A little thing I found funny is in the 90s, they made an initiative to update some of the sayings written on the hearts. Their first updated phrase was having a heart that said the words, "fax me." It's funny to me because all of these original phrases, "be mine" and "kiss me" and all of that, will never be out of date. Those phrases are timeless, so clearly no need to update them. But when they did attempt to update them, they came up with "fax me," which I'm sure is currently the most dated phrase that they've ever used. But I understand, it was probably more of a gimmick than anything, the novelty of seeing such a current phrase on such a classic candy. Plus, I doubt it's hard to put anything you want on them, so might as well put whatever will get the public's attention that year.
You know those Valentine's Day candy hearts? Well, it turns out that every year Donald Trump releases his own version of those. First there's Covfefe.
There's a new batch of them every year, so really no need to be timeless.
He also made this one, "I'm so romantic, I've been married 3 times.
The idea of updating and staying current may be on their minds when it comes to the candy hearts, but it's my impression that they're not too concerned with it otherwise. Just look at their logo and the packaging they use on their products. Does that look like a company that's concerned with staying current? I don't even know what era these designs look like they're from. Maybe the 50s or the 30s? A lot of it's just slightly modified from the 1800s. You typically see companies update their logos and designs fairly often, but not NECCO. Their entire brand gives you that old-timey feel. Their labels say things like the original and an American classic. The candies themselves have mostly unchanged recipes and tastes. If I were to give you a taste test between a NECCO wafer fresh from the factory and one that was made by Oliver Chase himself in his original lozenge machine, you would have a hard time telling me which is which. I mean, obviously one would be incredibly stale and gross, but if you were to somehow get past that little detail, they'd be hard to tell apart. Even look at the companies they pursue to acquire. They all make candies considered to be classics. Most of them go back to the 1800s. In their sizable list of candies they produce, it's all stuff we consider to be old-fashioned. In the 1980s, I doubt there were many companies trying to control the candy button industry. They're clearly trying to appeal to the nostalgia of their customers. I don't have any market research to support this, but I'm guessing a large percentage of their customers are people who ate these candies when they were little, either buying it for themselves or for their kids to carry on the tradition. I've already said it twice, and I apologize to the NECCO people, but in general, I don't think their candies are particularly tasty. If you were to judge on taste alone, I think most people would probably prefer a Snickers bar or some Skittles over the stuff NECCO is selling. It's a perfect example of how you don't necessarily have to be innovative and ahead of the game to be successful, but it has to be done right. I don't know for sure if NECCO is successful. It's privately owned, so their figures aren't available to the public, but it sure seems like they are. If you look at it, they've been going for 171 years. They have some recognizable brands, and a huge boost in sales at this time every year. They sell a variety of candies that haven't changed much in taste or appearance for 100 years, and let's face it, could probably use a little update. Yet, they turn it into a positive. People know NECCO as that old-timey candy brand, and that's why people buy their products. I said something to this effect in my video about New Coke, but whether it tastes good or not doesn't matter. What matters is that it's the taste you're familiar with. Let me know in the comments if you knew about NECCO before this video, and if so, what product did you associate with them? And did you know that they were the ones behind the candy hearts? They don't make all of them, but they make a lot of them, and they were the ones who started the whole thing. If watching this video made you hungry for some candy hearts, you'd better get to the store as soon as you can. If you're watching this video after the holiday, you may still be able to find some on the clearance shelf. Otherwise, you may have to wait a while. But remember, the NECCO wafers are essentially the same thing, just slightly less entertaining, so those should get you through the year. And all their our other candies are available every month of the year anyway, so no need to rush out and get your NECCO products. Also, feel free to write any other thoughts about anything I talked about. Do you agree with my opinion that some of these candies aren't exactly the tastiest? What's your favorite phrase you've seen on a candy heart? Are you a fan of squirrel nut zippers, either the candy or the band? I'd like to hear what you have to say. So this is the part where I want to get some feedback from the viewers. Like I said, I've been using Squarespace to build my website. This is the actual footage of my first exposure to it. It really couldn't have been easier. It's all in one platform, there's no plugins or patches. I haven't needed it yet, but if you run into any issues, they have highly rated 24/7 customer support every day of the year. They just make it easy for anyone to make any kind of website. I'm the proof of that. I don't know anything about website design, yet here I am designing a website. If you'd like to easily design your own website, go to squarespace.com/COMPANYMAN, the link's in the description, and get 10% off your first purchase. And we can't forget about the 14-day free trial. Now, enough about your future website. Let's talk about my future website. I want to know what I should put on it. I came across this option here for blog posts, and I was thinking I could post some stuff that didn't make it to the video. I cut out entire paragraphs from my videos sometimes. I've made graphs and charts that went completely unused. Almost every week I have an alternate thumbnail for the video. So I'm thinking this could be a good way to share all of that. And also, you might not know this, but I have a movie review channel where I've posted less than 10 videos in the past 6 months. I see a lot of movies, but usually don't have enough content or motivation to make a full video about it, so I could post some movie thoughts on there too. Those are my biggest ideas so far, so let me know if you'd be interested in seeing any of that, and let me know what else I should have. I'm still in the early stages of this, so I'd really like your help in shaping everything. Alright, thank you for the help, and thank you for watching.